Good evening, ladies. We're moving on with our learning. On the last video, we spoke about how the book teaches us that whatever kind of debate we're starting, the most important thing is to go backwards and to not just argue about the small details at the end, but go all the way backwards and see where's the root of the thing that we disagree on. And he says here, for example, when we want to talk about Judaism, we need to start all the way from the beginning. We can't just show up on the Har Sinai and the Temple Mountain talking about how Moshe gave us the Torah. It doesn't work this way. So the most basic thing, he says, is understanding or speaking about, is there a God at all? Who said that this world was created? And in the book he says, הידיעה השורשית, עליה מושתת הכל וממנה מסועף הכל. He says the most basic knowledge or understanding, knowing that this world was created and that there is a God that created the world and he sustains this world every single day, that is the most basic thing in our belief. And without knowing that, without believing that, then we can't even start talking Judaism. You can't light Shabbat candles and do. Judaism is not about rituals. It's not some kind of tradition that we do fun things just to feel connected to generations that passed away. The most basic thing about Judaism is our connection to God. And in order to have this, we need to believe, we need to know that there is a God. If you don't know that there is a God, then what's the point of doing anything? And he says, Hayedi'ah Shalshit, which means the most basic thing is to know that there is a God. He's not talking about faith. He's not talking about believing. He says we need to know that there is a God. And in the book, he explains this and he says, when you stand in a room and you know with clarity that this room around you exists, you need to know with this kind of clarity and even more, we'll talk about it later, that there is a God. And he explains why. He says, first of all, knowing that there is a God is something that you acquire. You're not born with it. And if someone believes in Hashem just because this is how he was born and this is how he was raised, in a way, his belief in Hashem or his knowing Hashem is lacking. Because if he would have been raised in a Muslim family, he would have had a Muslim faith. And if he would have been raised in a Christian family, it would have been Christian. So the most complete faith is something that you acquire in your life, and it's not something that you were just taught as a child and therefore you believe. So it's something that you acquire in life, and the way to do that is by looking around in creation or looking at the world that we have around us. And he says that it doesn't matter what piece of the world you look at, whatever it is that you look at, if you look at an elephant or you look at a tree, if you look at a flower, if you look at a house, if you look at a cloud, if you look whatever it is in creation that you look at, you're supposed to be able to understand from that that there is a God. Why? He says, if you see a person standing with wearing an apron with stains of paint on it, holding a paintbrush, and on the other hand, holding a platter with paint, standing in front of a canvas. I don't know how to say canvas. Canvas is Hebrew. I'm sure it's very similar to English. And it's like something that you paint on and stand in an artistic room where people paint. You don't need to actually see him painting to know that he is a painter, right? It's enough what you see to know that he's a painter. And he says the stronger proof, even more than that, is to see the result. If you see a painting, you know that someone painted it. There's a very famous picture that we always give as an example. I'm hoping that it's known here as well. It's called the Mona Lisa. It's a very, very famous painting in France. The lady, the Mona Lisa. It's somewhere it's a very famous painting. So he says it's as if when you see the Mona Lisa, you look at it and you know without a doubt that someone painted it, right? You don't assume that there was an explosion or there were a bunch of kids that were playing with paint, doing finger painting, and somehow the Mona Lisa was created, right? When you see the Mona Lisa, when you see the beauty in it, when you see the order, when you see the details, when you see it, it's clear that someone made it. It's not something that is created by an explosion. It's not something that is created by a random hurricane that turned the colors around in the room and boom, it created the Mona Lisa. This is not how things work. And this is an example about a painting. But what about a melody? Let's say Beethoven. I don't know how to say that in English. Beethoven. He was a very famous musician, and he created beautiful music. And if you listen to his music, Beethoven, you don't assume that there was a hurricane and there were instruments flying in the air, and somehow it created the beautiful, beautiful music of Beethoven. Because when there is something chaotic, it doesn't, the product won't be something with order, something with wisdom. This will not be the outcome. The same we can see with a structure. If you see the Eiffel Tower or whatever kind of an amazing building that there is, when you look at it, you don't think that there was a hurricane on stones and trees and sand, and somehow it created this amazing building. In order to have this amazing building, it requires wisdom and talent and wisdom. It requires wisdom. So whatever there is, the outcome, we can look at it and learn from it and assume from it about the creator or understand that there was a creator. And if you're talking about one specific object, let's say the Mona Lisa, okay, someone someone a little crazy, might think that the Mona Lisa was created by a hurricane of colors, all right, of paint. But this is one object. But if we're talking about something like the entire road system of New York City, okay, including traffic lights and crossroads and bridges, all of that, would someone assume that this was created by an explosion of a volcano? No, because it's something that it's impossible, right? If you think of all the roads of New York, how they connected to each other, how it's not something that is made by an explosion. And if we look at all of New York City, all of the plumbing and all of the buildings and the elevators and the trains and buses and cars and everything together, would you think that an amazing big explosion created all of that? No, because it doesn't make sense, because explosions don't create order. They don't create something that is so complex. They don't create something that requires such wisdom. Look at the humankind, right? We created amazing, amazing things. But not even one scientist is capable of making a brain of a worm, the most basic creature that there is. A worm. All right, there is no equivalent in the entire world, including the most complex computers that exist wherever. There is nothing that is equivalent in this world to the brain of one worm. And it's not something that I made up, it's something that I know actually. I read it. But there's nothing that is equivalent to the most simple thing in the world. So if it's so basic for us, it's so logical, it makes such basic sense that things that require such wisdom won't be created by an explosion. So look at this world. There's nothing equivalent that was made by men to the most simple thing in the universe, and still there are people who think that it was made by an explosion. It makes no sense. So it's not about believing, it's about knowing. Every kind of person with a little bit of logical mind will see it and see the wisdom in the creation and see how it doesn't make sense that it was just made by an explosion. This is it for today. I'm sorry that we have such a long video. I hope next time it won't happen. Have a good evening, ladies. Bye.